Hello, everyone. It is great to see you. Before you're thinking, hey, what is with this cover? We are looking at a very fun book that I am very excited to be able to share with you because it is so dense in history. There are lots of different ideas about early United States, about the kind of historical landscape there that we can to see through this literature. So, yeah, let's get started right away. We're looking at The Adventure of Tom Sawyer. Now, I think you may have heard of this because it is such a famous book. This book was published by Mark Twain in 1876, and it is about a boy named Tom, Tom Sawyer, and he is growing up along the Mississippi River. And this is kind of all you need to know about the background before we get reading. Today we're going to be looking at chapter 1 and some of the historical ideas there. So, yeah, let's get started right away. So Tom Sawyer is a little boy, and this is set in the town of St. Petersburg in 1840. So that is another kind of piece of thing that we may want to know. 1840 St. Petersburg in Missouri. Okay, let's get started right away. We see some illustrations here. This is in the public domain at the moment, so you can download this for free and legally. Yeah, and the setting is pre-Civil War Missouri. So we're going to see some ideas related to slavery as well. Okay, let's get started right away. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. We have a preface. Most of the adventures recorded in this book really occurred. 1 or 2 were experiences of my own, and the rest those of boys who were schoolmates of mine. Huck Finn is drawn from life, Tom Sawyer also, but not from an individual. He is a combination of the characteristics of 3 boys whom I knew, and therefore belongs to the composite order of architecture. The odd superstitions touched upon were all prevalent among children and slaves in the West at the period of the story, that is to say, 30 or 40 years ago. So we get from this the 1876 minus 32 40 years, and so we get 1840s or 30s. Although my book is intended mainly for the entertainment of boys and girls, I hope it will not be shunned by men and women on that account, for part of my plan has been to try to pleasantly remind adults of what they once were themselves and how they felt and thought and talked and what queer enterprise they sometimes engage in. And the queer here, very, very important. Throughout these kind of novels, especially written in the 1800s, queer does not mean the LGBTQ community, but refers to extraordinary and different. Often it was used in a negative sense, in a kind of derogatory manner, but I don't think it is necessarily too much of a negative manner in this case, but yeah, just something to point out. But here we get the idea that, so there's going to be Tom Sawyer. We also have Huck Finn. These are going to be characters drawn from his life, and so this is going to be a story of him as a child, of Mark Twain, what he went through as a child as well. So yeah, let's get started right away. So we have Tom Plays, Fights, and Hides. We're going to be reading that today. There. Oh, lots of illustrations. Very exciting. Okay. Whoa, interesting. Tom plays, fights, and hides. Tom, no answer. Tom, no answer. What's gone with that boy? I wonder. You, Tom, no answer. The old lady pulled her spectacles down and looked over them about the room. Then she put them up and looked out under them. She seldom or never looked through them for so small a thing as a boy. They were her state pair, the pride of her heart, and were built for style, not service. She could have seen through a pair of stove-lives just as well. She looked perplexed for a moment, and then said, not fiercely, but still loud enough for the furniture to hear, well, I lay it if I get hold of you all. Okay, so just from that sentence, we see a lady, the old lady. I wonder who she is. She's calling for Tom. Possibly, they're living together, presumably, possibly his mother. But yeah, she seldom or never looked through APs. So we're talking about her spectacles, and you can kind of tell immediately this is going to be a pretty humorous piece. She never looked through her spectacles because it was really small, as you can see, tiny little spectacles, and they were for style mainly and not for service. So She couldn't really see well through it. Yeah, but she was confused and she was calling for Tom. Well, if I get hold of you all. She did not finish, for by this time she was bending down and punching under the bed with a broom, and so she needed breath to punctuate the punches with. So she was she was using the brooms to look under the bed, and we can kind of tell that this boy is probably really mischievous. He's gonna be really hiding under the bed. The fact that she has to do this kind of tells us a lot about this boy, Tom Sawyer. She resurrected nothing but the cat. I never did see the beat of that boy. She went to the open door and stood in it and looked out among the tomato vines and the jimson weeds that constituted the garden. No, Tom. So she lifted up her new voice at an angle calculated for distance and shouted, "You, Tom!" She's yelling loud and clear. Where is Tom, right? And the jimson plant that we see here is this is at the moment often called jimson weed. And they're also known as the devil's trumpet. And they're poisonous plants that is likely originated from Central America, I have heard. But yeah, poisonous jimson weeds. And so they were in the gardens, and she's shouting, she's looking for Tom. I wonder where he is. There was a slight noise behind her, and she turned just in time to see the small boy by the slack of his roundabout and arrest his flight. There! I might have thought of that closet. What have you been doing in there? Nothing. Nothing? Look at your hands and look at your mouth. What is that truck? Okay, so she finally caught the boy. She sees the small boy with the slack of his roundabout. And this roundabout, I think it is, I believe it is a part of his pants. Let me look that up. In the 1800s, what were roundabouts? Oh, there were shirts. They were a type of jacket that was particularly worn for boys in the 1800s, and they had a circular cut bottom without the tails. Normally, if you see like 1800 movies, they're gonna have like shirts that go down like this, but these went down like this, and so they were called roundabouts. Okay, so she caught him by the roundabout, and she's like, "There, I might have thought of that closet." She found him in that closet. "What are you doing there?" "Nothing." And then Tom's denying him. Seems very much like a mischievous boy. "Nothing. Look at your hands and look at your mouth. He must have dirt all over it, or something that this lady does not like. What is that truck? He has a truck too." "I don't know, aunt." So we find the relation. They're aunts. The old lady is his aunt. "Well, I know. It's jam. That's what it is. 40 times I've said if you didn't let that jam alone, I'd skin you. Hand me that twitch." I'd skin you is kind of an old way of saying I'd hit you, and so it's like, "Oh, I told you not to do it, or else I'll punish you for it." And he's like, he ate the jam. "Hand me that switch." The switch hovered in the air. The peril was desperate. "My, look behind you, aunt." The old lady whirled around and snatched her skirts out of danger. The lad fled. On the instant, scrambled up the high board fence and disappeared over it. And so he said, "Oh, aunt, look behind you." And then when she whirled around, he jumped over the fence and ran away. And his Aunt Polly stood surprised a moment and then broke into a gentle laugh. And so the aunt seems like a really, really kind person. I think she was worried about where the boy was, and then she seems really good humored. "Hey, the boy, can't I never learn anything? Ain't he played me tricks enough like that for me to be looking out for him by this time? What old fools is the biggest fools there is. Can't learn an old dog new tricks, as the saying is. My goodness, he never plays them like 2 days, and how is a body to know what's coming? He appears to know just how long he can torment me before I get my dander up, and he knows if he can make out to put me off for a minute or make me laugh, it's all down again, and I can't hit him a lick." So she seems really good humored, and he knows that if he can get her to laugh, it's like she's not gonna hit him. And so she's like, I'm subject to his tricks all the time, but I never seem to learn. But she's really good humored. She's not angry. "I'm doing my duty by that boy, and that's the Lord's truth, God knows." And so the Lord here, probably a Christian reference, because in the 1830s, many white people were Christian, and so the Lord's truth refers to the Christian God. Goodness knows, spare the rod and spile the child, as the good book says. The good book is the Bible, again, the Christian Bible. I'm laying up sin and suffering for us both, I know. He's full of this old scratch, but laws of me, he's my old dead sister's boy, poor thing, and I ain't got the heart to lash him somehow. Lash him would be to hit him and kind of ground him for what he does. And so he's my own dead sister's boy. So the reason they're living together is because his mother has passed away, and so he's living with his aunt. Every time I let him off, my conscience does hurt me so, and every time I hit my old heart most breaks. And so she's conflicted between, should I hit him, should I tell him that he did wrong really severely, or should I just let him be? Well, a man that is born of woman is a few days and full of trouble, as the scripture says, and I reckon it so. As the scripture, again, the Bible, and the Bible says supposedly that man that is born of woman is a few days and full of trouble. He'll play hooky this evening, and I'll just be obliged. I believe this is obliged to make him work tomorrow to punish him. Southern for afternoon. This evening means afternoon. And so she's not going to punish him. It's mighty hard to make him work Saturdays when all the boys is having holiday. But he hates work more than he hates anything else, and I've got to do some of my duty by him, or I'll be the ruination of the child. And so she feels a moral obligation to making into a more right child. It's kind of a juxtaposition of how we would think about education right now, because if a little child is very mischievous, of course, if he or she does harm, you must say something. But I think a lot of parents right now would kind of enjoy them, let them run around, let them be a child. But I think in the 1800s, they were more strict about this. They were like, oh, little children are basically like little adults, and so they should know all they should know. They should be civilized, they should be knowing their table manners, they should be calm, and they shouldn't be running out loud like this. And so more strict of a education, especially in connection to this kind of religious idea. Tom did play hooky, and he had a very good time. He got back home barely in season to help Jim, the small colored boy, saw next day's wood and split the kindlings before supper. At least he was there in time to tell his adventures to Jim, while Jim did 3/4 of the work. So Jim is the little small colored boy, presumably a slave, and he was working with him, and Jim did 3/4 of the work. And so Jim is a enslaved, he is probably a child of an enslaved worker. Tom's younger brother, or rather half-brother, Sid, was already through with his part of the work, picking up chips, for he was a quiet boy and had no adventurous, troublesome ways. And so Sid is his half-brother, so possibly his mother or father has a step wife or step-husband, so his family's kind of like that. While Tom was eating his supper and stealing sugar as opportunity offered, Aunt Polly asked him questions that were full of guile and very deep, for she wanted to trap him into damaging revealments. And so she wanted to know what he's doing outside, right? Like many other simple-hearted souls, it was her pet vanity to believe she was endowed with the talent for dark and mysterious diplomacy, and she loved to contemplate her most transparent devices as marvels of low cunning. She said, "Tom, it was middling warm in school, weren't it?" "Yes'm." "Probably yes, ma'am." "Powerful warm, wasn't it?" "Yes'm." "Didn't you want to go in swimming, Tom?" A bit of a scare shot through Tom, a touch of uncomfortable suspicion. He searched Aunt Polly's face, but it told him nothing. So she said, "No, well, not very much." The old lady reached out her hand and felt Tom's shirt and said, "But you ain't too warm now, though." And it flattered her to reflect that she had discovered that the shirt was dry without anybody knowing that was what she had in her mind. But in spite of her, Tom knew where the wind in her lay now. So he forestalled what might be the next move. "Some of us pumped up our heads. Mine's empty yet, see?" Aunt Polly was vexed to think she was overlooked that bit of circumstantial evidence and missed a trick. Then she had a new inspiration. Tom, you didn't have to undo your shirt collar where I sewed it to pump on your head, did you? Unbutton your jacket. And so they're kind of, Tom's trying to defend, not reveal anything about what he did. This pump, I believe, is a game that they're playing. Possibly they're spraying water on each other, and so and the aunt's obviously really kind. She's trying to figure out what the boy has been up to, but she's kind of obvious, right? The trouble vanished out of Tom's face. He opened his jacket. His shirt collar was securely sewed. Mother, well, go along with you. I'd made sure you'd play hooky and been a swimming, but I forgive ye, Tom. I reckon you're a kind of a saint cat, as the saying is. Better than you look this time. So she's like, oh, you're actually better than you'd like. You didn't actually go swimming, which I told you not to do. So, yeah. I think I'll cut it here, and then we'll continue really soon. I just don't want to make this video too long. But yeah, welcome to the series, and let's see each other at part 2 again. Thank you.